It's interesting, isn't it? You go through life and, well, you experience hurt.
Yeah,
And sometimes, you're the one who inflicts it. It's like this unavoidable part of being human.
I think that's spot on.
And it brings us to something we really need to think about, something powerful, forgiveness.
It's more than just an idea, right? It's like
Hmm.
this core principle for living a good life, you know?
Hmm.
It affects how we find peace within ourselves and how we build and maintain healthy relationships with others.
Like a guiding principle, almost like what you'd find in, well, like a faith tradition,
Yeah,
right?
that's a good way to put it.
And so much of what we understand about forgiveness does come from faith, right?
Yeah.
And there's this verse that really sets the tone for our conversation today.
Hmm.
From Ephesians chapter 4, verse 32.
Okay.
Be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other, just as in Christ God forgave you.
It's so simple, but it gets right to the point, doesn't it? It's not just saying, hey, forgiveness is a nice thing to do. It's showing us that it's a direct reflection of something divine, a reflection of grace.
So our deep dive today is all about really understanding what forgiveness means at its heart.
Yeah.
What is its power in our own lives and in the world around us?
Right.
We'll be looking at some recent events that have happened alongside this timeless wisdom to see how it all connects.
And I think that'll be really insightful.
So let's start by defining what we actually mean by forgiveness.
Okay.
It's not just brushing things off like saying, oh, it's fine, when it really isn't.
No, definitely not. It's much deeper than that. It's like love.
Yeah.
Love in action, it's about consciously choosing to let go of that hurt and bitterness, the kind that can really stick with you.
It's a conscious decision,
Yes,
a way to heal and move forward that's not dictated by that pain.
exactly.
And importantly, it doesn't mean you're saying what happened was okay or pretending it didn't hurt,
Of course not.
because the hurt was real, the impact was real.
And have to acknowledge that. That's really important.
But true forgiveness is about not letting that pain control your life.
That's it. Not letting the bitterness take root and poison you.
That sounds really difficult.
Yeah, it's not always easy. Our natural instinct when we're hurt is to hold on to that hurt, right?
Yeah.
Maybe to protect ourselves or to make sure the other person understands how much they've hurt us. But what often happens is that holding on to the resentment ends up hurting us more than anyone else.
Yeah.
That's why it's so important to try and forgive, even though it can be hard.
So it's about recognizing the wrong, acknowledging the pain, but then deciding not to be ruled by it anymore.
Right.
And there's this idea of giving the wrong to a higher power, to God. What's that mean?
Well, it recognizes that we can't always achieve perfect justice, perfect resolution on our own. It's not about ignoring our own responsibility to heal or to seek appropriate consequences when necessary. It's about acknowledging that we don't have to carry the burden of being the sole judge, the sole arbiter of justice.
It's having faith that there's something bigger at work.
Yeah, even if we can't see the whole picture right now.
So when we forgive, it impacts us in two ways, right? There's the effect on the person who forgives,
Right.
and then there's the potential impact on the person who is forgiven. Let's talk about the giver first. What happens within you when you choose to forgive?
It can be incredibly transformative. Like we were talking about, it's about letting go of that emotional weight, that resentment, that bitterness. Imagine carrying around a heavy weight all the time.
Yeah.
That's what unforgiveness can feel like emotionally.
It weighs you down.
It does. Forgiveness lets you put that weight down.
It creates space, right? Where there was anger and pain, now there's room for something else.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe peace, maybe hope.
It's a process of healing.
It is. By forgiving, you're actively taking care of your own emotional well-being.
So you gain a sense of freedom.
Absolutely. You're
Yeah.
free from the past
Yeah.
and the pain that comes with it.
Wow. And what about the person being forgiven? What's the impact on them?
Well, while we're mainly focusing on the giver today, it's important to remember that being forgiven can have a huge impact on the person who receives it. It can open the door to remorse, to understanding the consequences of their actions, and maybe even to reconciliation.
Powerful.
It is. But it's so important to remember that forgiveness is ultimately a choice made by the person who was hurt. It doesn't depend on the other person's actions or response.
That's a really important point.
It is.
Forgiveness is about your healing, first and foremost.
Yes.
Now, we talked about Ephesians 4:32 earlier.
Yeah.
Why is this biblical root so important to understanding forgiveness?
Well, that verse isn't just a standalone thing.
Right.
It comes from a larger understanding of grace and redemption.
Mm-hmm.
The idea is that we've all been forgiven on a grand scale. The phrase, just as in Christ God forgave you, sets a really powerful example.
Yeah.
And it gives us the best reason to extend that same grace to others.
So it's not just about being nice, it's about reflecting that divine example in how we interact with each other.
Exactly. It's a high bar for sure, but it's one based in love and understanding. Holding on to those grievances, well, it can be really damaging, not just for us, but for our communities as a whole.
And there was that powerful story from South Africa in early 2025.
Oh,
Can
yes.
you remind us what happened?
This was such an incredible event. A woman whose son had been killed publicly forgave his killer during a televised interview. Can you imagine the depth of her pain?
It's unimaginable.
It is. But she chose a different path for herself.
And she said something so powerful that really stuck with people.
Yeah, she said, I'm choosing to be free. I won't let hate have the last word.
Wow.
That statement captures so much of what we've been talking about today.
It does.
It was a conscious decision to free herself, a refusal to be defined by the tragedy.
And that act had such a ripple effect on the whole community.
Absolutely. It sparked a national conversation about restorative justice, about trying to repair the harm instead of just focusing on punishment, and about empathy, trying to understand, even when faced with terrible acts. It also highlighted the healing power of faith. It was a real-life example of what forgiveness can look like.
It makes you wonder what's possible, even in the darkest of times.
I agree.
And there was also a story from Chicago that speaks to this, too. Tell us about that.
Oh, this is a great example. In Chicago, there's a former gang member who completely turned his life around and started a community outreach program.
Oh, wow.
His goal is to reach young people who might be headed down a similar path, and his message is all about forgiveness and transformation.
So he's using his own experiences to guide others towards a better future.
That's exactly it. He understands that cycle of anger, violence, and trauma, and he's trying to break it.
That's amazing.
It is. His program uses mentoring and sharing stories to help these kids. He talks about how he found a different way, and he stresses that change and healing are possible for them too.
What's the main message she shares with them?
He tells them you are more than your past. He wants them to understand that their mistakes don't have to define them. That by learning to let go of anger and by healing from trauma, which often means forgiving themselves and others, they can create a new path for themselves.
These stories, while so different, really show the power of forgiveness,
They do?
both personally and for the wider community. It's not just some abstract concept, it has a real impact.
That's right. They remind us that even when things are incredibly painful, choosing to forgive can create a better future for ourselves and our communities.
Now, there's another aspect of forgiveness we need to talk about.
Okay.
Self-forgiveness. It's one thing to forgive someone who's hurt us, but sometimes the hardest person to forgive is ourselves.
You're absolutely right. We often set such high standards for ourselves, and when we don't meet them, we can be so hard on ourselves.
It's true.
That guilt and shame we carry can be just as heavy, if not heavier, than resentment towards others.
So how does grace play into self-forgiveness?
Grace is the understanding that we're not defined by our mistakes. We're all imperfect. We all mess up sometimes. Just like we're called to forgive others, we're also called to extend that same compassion and understanding to ourselves.
It's about acknowledging our flaws without letting them control us.
Exactly. And knowing that we can learn from our mistakes and move forward without being weighed down by them forever.
It's like allowing ourselves to be human.
Yes, to make mistakes, to learn and grow from them. And knowing that God's grace is there for us, even when we're struggling to forgive ourselves, is a powerful reminder that we are worthy of forgiveness from others and from ourselves.
This leads to a really important point.
Okay?
The idea that forgiveness isn't weakness, which is something a lot of people think.
It's the opposite, really.
It seems like it takes a lot of strength.
It does. It's not about saying what happened was okay or letting someone off the hook. Forgiveness takes real courage. It takes courage to face the pain and choose to let go of the resentment.
It's an act of faith.
It is.
Yeah.
Faith in something bigger than ourselves, faith in the possibility of healing, faith in our own strength.
So when you forgive, you're not losing something, you're gaining something.
You're gaining freedom. Freedom from that emotional prison of bitterness and anger. You're gaining peace of mind, healing your heart, and taking back your own well-being. Forgiveness is truly empowering.
This has been such a fascinating conversation. As we wrap up, I'm thinking about what this means for each of us listening.
That's the key, isn't it? It's all about applying this to our own lives. Think about it. Is there any unforgiveness you're carrying around, maybe without even realizing it? Is there someone you need to forgive? Or maybe even yourself?
It's a question worth pondering.
It is, because forgiveness, both giving and receiving it, has the power to change our lives for the better.
It's a path towards peace, stronger connections, and a deeper understanding of compassion and kindness.
And like we've seen, it's not just some lofty idea, it makes a real difference in the world.
It does.
It's about forgiving each other, just as we've been forgiven. It's a call to live with more compassion and ultimately more freedom.